The most common question I get when I start working with men, especially in relationships, is they always ask me, what do I say, what do I do in all of these different scenarios, especially when it comes to conflict. Now, I have loads of videos on this channel that you can use to give you that fish to know exactly what to do and what to say. But ultimately, my main goal for you is I want to work myself out of a job. I want to give you the skills and the tools in every situation and scenario with your wife or girlfriend to know exactly what to say and what to do to bring you guys even closer together. So that's my mission for you in this video, is by the end, you'll have a framework and how to operate from a high status place to know exactly what to do with utter certainty, to never second guess yourself. And I will let you know, the fact that you do second guess yourself, you're not sure, makes things worse over time. So my goal is to give you the ability to fish on your own, to give you the pull, to give you 10,000 hours of experience in one simple video. I'm a licensed marriage family therapist, and for the past 8 years, I've been helping hundreds of men from around the world find and keep their ideal relationships by reaching their full potential and accepting themselves in the process. Now, that statement of reaching your full potential is a part of this video. I want you to imagine, let's say for your work, your career, I'm gonna assume that you're really good at what you do. But when you first started in your career, you didn't have a good understanding of things. There was some learning curve going on. Maybe you had some base talents from schooling or whatever it is about who you are as a man and your base skills, but over time, you developed what's known as unconscious competence. And just like your skill in your job, you can develop the skill set to interact with your wife in a relationship to get the goals you always want on an unconscious level, which means it happens automatically. Now, let me explain this paradigm and this concept a little bit more in depth before I teach you the actual framework, how to become that man. So in this model, there's 4 different levels of developing any skill. Now, this can apply to literally any habit, behavior, or skill that you have. So I'm gonna give an example with rock climbing. Rock climbing is something I've been doing for the past year. Now, skills can be applied with your wife, communication, understanding how to pass her tests, how to take full responsibility, emotional intelligence, how to lead and be assertive. These are all unconscious processes that you can learn and develop to make yourself the highest value man in a relationship. Now, let's use rock climbing. So the first example is unconscious incompetence. Unconscious basically means that you're not aware of something, and incompetence, you suck at it, right? So when I first started rock climbing, what happened is that there's certain skills in how to climb the rocks, other than using brute strength, which is what I was doing, that allowed me to be a better climber. But when I first started climbing these little techniques, I wasn't even aware of how bad I was. Now, when I watch someone who's climbing, I can tell the things they're doing that's making them a bad climber. It's making it harder on them. Small example, when you're hanging on the rocks, when you hang, you're supposed to hang with straight arms instead of bent arms, because if you hang with bent arms looking for your next hold, you're wasting your strength. So that is one micro skill in rock climbing, to extend your arms to conserve your strength. This is why a lot of women will outclimb men, because they have to focus on the skill set instead of using brute strength. So over time, what I recognize is that when I started the climb, I started to become aware of all the bad things, all the bad habits I was doing that made me a poor climber. Eventually, over time, you start to recognize these things, look at other people, learn new information, watch these videos, and you start to apply it in real time on the wall, and you see an improvement. And that improvement and growth creates more motivation to continue learning. That's why when you watch these videos and you engage in the symptoms and the causes and the skills, you start to see different results from your wife or girlfriend, and you continue the motivation to do so. So over time, what happens, going up this chart, you gain conscious incompetence. Now, eventually, 3 to 6 months later, a lot of people, they recognize, oh, okay, when I'm climbing, yeah, that hold right there, yeah, I should have put my foot out, something's called flagging. I should have matched my hand on the same hold. These little skills, you start to become aware why you're not doing as good as you should. And over time, what happens is that these new neuronal connections happen in your brain, and it starts to become more on autopilot. So what happens, you go from unconscious incompetence to conscious competence. So conscious competence is now when I climb, if I'm being mindful and aware in the present moment, I'm able to see what I'm doing and do the right techniques and skills when I'm consciously being aware of it, okay? Over time, as you do this more and more, you reach the highest level unconscious competence. So let's use LeBron James. LeBron James is a perfect example with basketball, okay? So when LeBron James gets the ball's up in the air, he's about to slam dunk it right into the basket. He's not thinking, okay, the flight path is about 4 degrees centimeter. If I jump off my right foot at this moment, take my hand with the velocity, he's not thinking. It's just ball up in the air, slam dunk, right? Or he gets a shot. He doesn't have to focus on the mechanics. Get the shot, you just put it up, right? But that took thousands of hours of practice for him to reach this level of unconscious competence. And the thing is that when you're surrounded by a lot of other people going through the same process of learning this skill, and you get feedback from coaches and mentors that tell you exactly what you're doing wrong, this creates a process of getting to this level a lot faster. Now, this is what I can offer you in my Marriage Mastery program. Every single week, we have a couple spots available for calls. You'll get on a call with me or my marriage evaluator. Click the link down below, fill out the application, show you're committed, and on that call, that free call, what we're gonna do for you is we're gonna say, dude, look, this is what you've been doing wrong. That when you do this and this, you will get a complete change in the way you interact with your wife or girlfriend. Because it's hard to see what you're doing wrong when you're in your own microcosm, your own environment. You don't have a different set of eyes on the issue. You only have your own. But when you consult with an expert who's seen the same process over and over and over and over again, I can tell you exactly what you're doing wrong in a matter of seconds so you can correct it. Okay, so now you understand the concept of how to get to that higher self through the levels of competence and unconscious subconscious versus conscious competence. Now let's talk about this in terms of two separate selves. Now there's lots of theories out there about how to change your identity, change who you are. This is the most simple, and the simplest one will work the best, okay? So I want you to imagine that you have two selves. On one self, you have fear. Fear is actually a good thing. Fear is why we survive. We saw a tiger in the wilderness, we ran away. Fear is a good thing. It's a useful mechanic. However, fear can have an allergic effect where you become afraid in one scenario and you carry that fear into other scenarios where you don't even need it anymore, okay? So we have fear. We also call this the lower self. Its main goal is to protect you. That's all it cares about, is that you survive. We'll also call this the ego, okay? It's your conceptualized self, lots of other words for it. It is a part in you in your brain that is the emotional part. It's responsive to your emotions. Now, on the other end, we have love, okay? This is your higher self. Love, higher. You could even say angel and devil if you're religious. This is more not protect, but more provide, give value, okay? It's not worried about taking care of itself because it feels okay the way it is. All its needs are met. So we have higher self, we have more rationality. I can go on and on, okay? Spirituality, contribution, and growth. These are very clear and distinct between you, all right? Now, whenever you respond emotionally, like I said, you operate from this place of fear. And I wanna let you know that the main goal of this self that controls, it's subconscious, by the way. So let's have, this is your conscious brain. This is your subconscious brain. It's an automatic process, okay? Subconscious. This one's main goal, like I said, is to keep you alive. Your ego doesn't give a damn if you're happy. I'll say that again. Your ego doesn't care if you're happy. Your ego only cares that you survive. Therefore, it's going to do, feel, and think things to just keep you safe. But oftentimes what happens is if you keep yourself safe, you block off other people. Imagine putting these like buildings and towers and walls in front of you. Yeah, you'll be safe, but people can't get close to you. And this is what's happening with a lot of men in relationships. Let me give a perfect story example. One of my clients, Joe, he grew up with a very controlling, aggressive father, okay? And as he was developing as a child, he learned a couple of beliefs, or his ego did, about how to survive in regards to expressing his emotions and getting his needs met. Now, I wanna let you know, as a child, attention and love, that's the currency of life for us. Because as a child, as we were evolving, if you could not get attention from your caregivers and interact with them in a way to get your needs met, what would happen is that you would die. So you have to adjust and learn new strategies of getting your needs met and expressing your emotions that was appropriate in that environment. Now, unfortunately, your subconscious brain doesn't know the difference between your father, your mother, and your wife or girlfriend, especially when you get emotional. So let's look at it like this. Imagine in this original environment, as Joe was growing up with his very controlling, aggressive father, what he had to do was he had to learn that his needs didn't matter, right? That was one thing. A second belief was he couldn't express his emotions and you go away from conflict. He also learned that in order to get attention and love, you have to achieve. You must get things, you must achieve things, because every time he was successful in sports or school, then his dad gave him attention. Simply being who he wasn't good enough. At least that's what Joe's brain told him. So imagine how this plays out in a new situation with his wife. Situation with his wife, right? New environment. His wife's not his father, but his subconscious brain, his fear, his lower self doesn't tell a difference. This is someone who can meet my needs or not. So I'm gonna use the same strategies I used growing up to get my needs met the same way. However, what happened was a little bit different because his wife wasn't his father. And when you remain unconscious, your brain cannot tell the difference. So whenever Joe had a situation where he had emotions that he didn't want to express because he thought he would be rejected by them, what do you think happened to his wife? His wife felt disconnected. He couldn't be vulnerable with her. And to get affection and love, he thought he had to work and provide, give her money, give her this lifestyle. But really, she wants those things, but that's not her primary concern. A woman rather live in a shoebox with a man, getting complete love and devotion and conscious attention, than live in a mansion alone and not connected. Why do you think Elon Musk has gone through 5 different marriages? I don't know the guy personally, but I can imagine based on what I've heard about these divorces, my research about them, he thinks in his mind, if I just give them this lavish lifestyle, they should feel grateful. But a woman needs more than that, okay? Especially modern women. So what happened is that the first thing we did 3 processes with Joe to shift himself to be in this higher self more often to get his needs met. So the first thing you do in shifting away from this lower self into your higher self and embodying that high value man is, the first step is forgiving the father, okay? Now, for a lot of you, this could be your mother, this could be multiple people in your life, but for Joe, the biggest influence in creating this fear self was his father. So I want you to imagine there's all these invisible strings from the present moment leading into the past, these emotional moments, that whenever his wife pulled away from him or got angry or did all these things, his fear brain says, that's just like my father. And he had emotional ties to the past through guilt and shame and insecurity and fear and anxiety that was having him look into the past subconsciously and use the same strategies. You see what I mean? So by forgiving his father and seeing a new frame on what happened, why he did what he did, and how he developed his ego, imagine getting a scissors and just cutting off this past and releasing it, okay? Now this is very scary for a lot of men. It's very scary for your ego because your ego thinks by letting go of these past things, I'm not gonna be safe anymore. Who am I? It's like an existential crisis, but it is a vital first step in changing who you are, is reframing those past events to see the truth about why your father or the person who made you become the way you were in that context, why they did what they did, and then having compassion and empathy for that person so you can let it go. The second thing we did is called externalizing the problem. Now, this is part of the process we're doing right here for you. You see, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he did not exist. And your ego, the greatest trick it's pulling with you, is convincing you that it's not real. What this means is that this fear, this lower self, if it was a virus inside of you and it was controlling your life and it wanted to survive, do you think it would want to be labeled, understood, analyzed, and for you to become aware of it? Hell no, because then you can overcome it. You have more power and authority over it. So what we do in my process in the Marriage Mastery program with guys is we have them externalize it. We give this self a name. We have them understand in situations it comes up. We give allies to it. We understand in situations when it was the lowest. And with me and Joe personally, what I told him is that with me in session with him, this fear doesn't exist. And I asked him, how is this possible? How are you able to open up about your emotions? How are you able to be honest with me? Because I feel so connected to you when you do this. And this translates to the third and final step, which is amplifying the solution. See, once you externalize and understand this negative self in you, its goals, its aspirations, its dreams, why it's there, who it wants, the who, what, when, where, why of it all, you have a crystallized picture of this lower self, then you crystallize the higher self and you amplify it. You see, for example, someone who is depressed, if they say, I'm depressed, I'm a depressed person, I have bipolar. I always say the same thing. Is your bipolar? Is your depression? Do you own it? Do you always have it? Is it always there? You see, how can you be something, depression, that's not always there? You see, our concept of ourself flows and changes. We have a dominant storyline that plays out in certain situations, and then we have a submersive other storyline that's alternative to the main one. And if you can start to amplify the positive and recognize it's been there at times, it starts to become the main dominant storyline. So for Joe, this higher self, this love, this angel on his shoulder, we recognize it's who he truly is at the core level. That this fear is just this veil protecting him, and that it no longer has to in the relationship. And day by day, as we amplify this positive self, he stepped in and embodied that high value man that was unreactive to his wife's test. That when she tests him, and normally this fear brain would come up, he said, I hear that voice. I feel that emotion. I know what it wants. I can separate myself from it now and choose to act differently from a conscious level. And the more you do this, you are literally rewiring your brain to become that man that gets what he ultimately wants most.